Have a little transition into the last part of this hybrid session, and this is a panel session, and I am pleased to introduce the alumni in residence group from the new faculty experience on 2-year college program, and we'll just let them have a couple minutes each to talk, and when they get done talking, then we're going to have some questions. So, I'm going to order. Go ahead.
Okay.
Are we talking about what the topic is?
I don't know the topic.
Oh, I see. Okay, so Adrian will introduce them.
We were told that a possible topic would be our transformation as instructors. So we came up with a list of some of the things that have affected how we have transformed over the last few years, and we're each going to talk about one thing. So for me, one of the biggest things has been the reality versus the ideal of higher education. We're learning a lot about ideal ways to teach and the best ways to do things so that students really learn deeply and thoroughly, and that's great. But there's always a but, right? For some of you, maybe you don't have the lab support you need. Sometimes you don't have the administrative support you need. Sometimes your student population is just not going to buy in. So one of the things that I have had to learn is, how do I sort of incorporate as much of this ideal stuff into the reality that I am facing? For me, in particular, that actually took the form of a fight about grading. I would love to give so much feedback to my students, and I did for a few years, and I was working 80 hours a week, every week, year in, year out. I never took breaks, and one day my chair actually saw me grade, and he was appalled. He was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I have to, this homework assignments." He said, "How often do they turn those in?" I said, "Every class." He said, "It takes you this long every time?" I said, "No, this is a small stack." And that was when I realized that while there is an ideal to what we could do as instructors, we are human beings. And holding myself to that ideal was simply not realistic for me. And that was okay. It was okay to let it go and not do everything. And I think that that's actually really important to understand. There's a lot being presented, but you can't do it all. If you do, you will burn yourself out and you'll become a worse instructor. So that was my thing.
How many of you are feeling overwhelmed after these couple days so far? Just curious. What did you guys do differently? No. You should be learning quite a few new things to take into your classes. What I want to tell you is that it's okay to introduce those things slowly, no matter what Dwayne tells you. You'll all have your own style. What I have figured out over a period of years is that it's okay to introduce things slowly. So your modest changes are very important, maybe even more important than your big changes. That's what it was very difficult for me to realize as I've evolved from somebody who lectured 99% of the time to somebody who now lectures 70% of the time, which is far better. And let students take things on their own a little more. And the good news is that you can plan your modest changes modestly before class on a piece of paper and then hand them some excellent activity you've done. And you just have to do one. So that's all I wanted to tell you guys. That's the hardest thing I've had to learn.
Okay. All right. So one thing I've been able to take away from this is, you go back and you do a lot of work, and you find yourself doing even more work because you want to incorporate everything you do, and you don't want to stress yourself out and burn yourself out. And I find, and I've been lucky enough that I've averaged seeing some people here at least once per year at a conference or a workshop doing this, because being able to connect, I'm at the moment a one-person physics department at my campus. So I'm the only physicist. I talk with other scientists, but not physicists, and there's a difference. And so being able to come back and reconnect with other physicists through workshops, conferences, whatever you want to call it, does a lot to get you recharged and ready to go at it again and expend your energy. And I guess that's what I wanted. Chris?
No, you're so not. All right, so sort of keeping on this theme, one of the things that I think is important to help yourself not burn out is to find fun and fulfilling things to do, professionally speaking, but also personally speaking. And so one of the things I've done, and I guess I'll touch on the other topic, hopefully I'm not stealing is that I am until this semester I was a one-person department, but I work at a college with 3 campuses and mine was the smallest. And so there are other colleagues that I have to work with, and we're supposed to develop the curriculum together, but none of them have bought into anything beyond traditional classes and are not interested in buying it. So trying to work with that, I find I'm branching out more in my college. So I'm finding colleagues in other disciplines to work with. So I have a math colleague like Sherry and Heather where we teach a linked class, and I've found that really rewarding. And I work with the professional development organization at my college to run workshops, so I can try to bring in other faculty to my side and try to build this consistency at the college. And now I'm interfacing with humanities, well, but no longer humanities, the writing and disciplines to bring more writing into STEM fields. So I think finding things that are fulfilling to do and let you grow professionally beyond just what you do in the classroom is important. And that's something that I think I was inspired to do by talking to and meeting all of the people here with NFE and then at AAPT and hearing about all the different things they have their fingers in and realizing that is something I could do because it's energizing. Right.
And I don't know if I'm next, but I'll be next. You can pass it on. When asked, to talk about my transformation, I came to this in March. We were on quarters, so I came back spring quarter and decided I am going to whiteboard this class to death. I've already had these students for 2/3 of the year, and they rebelled. And that's okay, because I learned from that experience. Now the key is to realize that there's going to be bumps, and to learn to have the mindset that I'm going to say, okay, what worked, what didn't work? Well, what didn't work is I tried to implement it 2/3 of the way into my class. But it was still worth doing because I got feedback, and then I had the summer to reflect on that and do it a little bit differently next time. And so that's what I did. And now I take whiteboarding and make it more general, and I share that as faculty development workshops with my colleagues in other disciplines. And they're like, oh, you mean you can teach something without lecturing to them? So it's been very eye-opening. Biology professor and I have been kind of collaborating on that, using everything from Dwayne's. I just borrow mercilessly from what I learned from Dwayne. And so, and then the second term, it was in the fall, and I had a student who said, oh, I'm pre-med, and your class meets twice a week, 2 hours each meeting. But these whiteboards stress me out. I don't like to talk in front of my peers. And so I just, for the last 10 weeks, just haven't come to Wednesday's class because it stressed me out too much. Well, he didn't finish the class either. But, so then that taught me that I have to do a better job of setting that expectation in week 1, that you are required to work with your peers and to develop that collaborative experience expectation up front. So what is it that you're going to try? How are you going to learn from that? And realize that just because it didn't go well this time, try it again, because it's worth doing if you believed in it. And your students will eventually. Now on student evaluations, I get the feedback. I say, what helped your learning? That's all the question is. And I get at least a half to 2/3 of my students who say whiteboarding. You know, so unprompted, they bought in, and you can tell it in the classroom now. So whatever it is that you're gonna try, and I've tried a lot of other things from this group, keep at it, because persistence pays off.
Okay, I'm going to probably echo a couple of things that have already been said, but I'm guessing that you're all feeling overworked and maybe a little bit overwhelmed, like Aurelian said. And I can remember walking out of my first one of these things and not really having a clue how I could ever implement any of these things in my class. I was so inexperienced, and I'm still inexperienced. But Aurelian is so spot on. He says, try one thing that really sticks out to you from this weekend. Go home and try that. Don't try to change wholesale what you're doing. You probably don't have the resources or the time or the means to do that. So pick one thing from this weekend that you liked a lot. And then I would encourage you all to continue attending things like this. Become a member at the national level. Become active in your state chapter. Particularly if you're somebody like myself who is a one-person department. I would not have survived this long if I hadn't met the folks that I've met at meetings like this and gotten involved at the state and national level. I wouldn't be sitting here today. And then I would encourage you to go home and share these ideas with the people that you work with, whether they're physics or chemistry or math or whatever. Share with them these ideas about whiteboarding or about student engagement. It's more about the students than it is about you as the teacher, I think, and it's about what they learn. And just always keep that in mind. Anybody have questions? We have time for questions?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay.
How many times, just going up to this, how many times do you retry something until you finally abandon it?
What I find is that I tried things, and then when I find something better, that I let that go because I found something that worked better. So for me, the whiteboarding has been a consistency. That just works throughout. Now, does it work for every single student? And do I have, somebody asked me, well, do you ever have students drop your class because they don't want to do peer collaboration? I'm like, well, sure. And so it's not going to work for everyone. But that's okay because I'm not a solo physics instructor, but I'm a solo physics instructor that does PER-based instructional strategies. I've got some some instructors that will learn, but I also have the traditional ones. So, the students have other options, and I'm okay doing what I think is best for them, even if they feel like I'm, asking too much or it's an uncomfortable scenario. I try to make it very clear that these are the expectations in this class. And so, anyhow. So, to answer your question, I rarely give up on something I believe in. And so far, the feedback's been, what I've stuck with has eventually turned around. But it took a little while.